Hi guys, I'm going to be creating a series of videos throughout the book to give you a different way of digesting the material and especially to help you catch up with lectures. And most of these videos will be in the Python visualizer or pythontutor.com. And one of the things that we covered in chapter 1 that I didn't make a video yet about, but basically I just want to say that sometimes I'm typing Python and sometimes I'm just typing English or other things for us to read on the screen. Those other things are captured in what Python calls a comment. So I start with a pound, and anything I write here is not code. It's just a way for me to give you some visual information. And so there you have it. The first thing I want to talk about in this very first video is that computers process information and that programs all are about figuring out how to manipulate information or data. And data is categorized into different types. Generally, we start out the semester by talking about numbers versus text. And when it comes to numbers, there are two data types for numbers. There is int, that's just an integer. It's just a regular number that can be negative or positive. The range is very big and there are no decimal points. We call those things integers or int for short. The other thing is float. That's a weird word. You probably haven't heard it before in this context, but it's actually a decimal-based number, like these numbers. And again, they can be very, very big, and they have a good bit of precision. The final data type that we introduced really early on in the semester is called string. And a string is any text. It's always surrounded in quotes. And when I say any text, I mean it can have punctuation, spaces, characters, anything you can make happen with the keyboard. So you can even have series of digits that look like numbers, but these are not numbers. This is the string with the character 0, while this is the integer 0. So two different things. And you can, put any text you want in here, weird symbols, some spaces. You can even add white space like tab characters and new lines, which we'll learn about later. Okay? Always surrounded in quotes. You can choose single quotes or double quotes. All right, so those are values. That's the data that we're going to be processing when we write a computer program. Of course, these values can represent anything in the real world. Pizza toppings, customer orders, pricing, ammunition in a rocket launcher, whatever you want can be represented with combinations of this data, okay? Now, variables are what we use to store and manipulate the data. So a variable name can be anything as simple as a, and anything as complicated as an entire phrase as long as it doesn't have spaces. So if I use the single equal sign and I write a single equal sign, that tells Python to create a variable called a. And then if I specify a value, it tells Python to put that value into the variable. Remember, integer values versus float values versus string values. So 67, I would say, is a value of type integer. Create another variable, and this time I'll put a float in it. If I can hit the decimal sign, and I'll create a third value, and I'll give it a more interesting variable name just so we can see that. All right. So the visualizer lets us see the variables as they get created. They look like little boxes with a value in them, which is exactly what you should think of a variable as, a kind of virtual box that stores one value, no more, no less. A value can be complex, like a string, or it can be simple, like an integer, okay? And variable names can be pretty much whatever you want as long as they don't have spaces and they don't start with numbers. Sometimes we use single letters as variable names when it's a very easy program, but when we get into more sophisticated programming and we want to keep track of like the radius of a circle or things like that, we start using more interesting variable names, okay? All right. Next video will be about expressions and operators.